Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story has it all. A quiet intern, a jar of cherry tomatoes, and the sweetest petty revenge served cold, just like the tomatoes should have been. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You can steal my lunch, but not my petty revenge. I started my first ever job this summer, delicious full-time office work that included me sitting on my butt at a computer all day for money. I gave up my entire summer for it, but the money was worth it. It was just a temporary summer job, but the rest of the office worked there permanently. There was me, a 17-year-old gal, and there was the rest of the office, all 30-plus years old with families and houses. I felt a little like an outsider and mostly sat at my desk silently, chipping in with a few comments here and there, but mostly doing my work. All my coworkers eat around 12 while I eat around 1 because I don't have anything in common with them and I like eating alone. I never put tags on my food because it hasn't been needed until today. Today I brought a small jar of cherry tomatoes to accompany my lunch, but when I got up to eat my lunch and some delicious cold cherry tomatoes, the jar was gone. My food was there, but no tomatoes in sight. I ate my lunch as usually, if not a bit sadly, and went to work again. That's when I spotted my empty tomato jar on a coworker's desk. I'm around 15 years younger than the rest of the office, already a bit of an outsider, and feel generally awkward while talking to most people, so calling Mr. Tomato Stealer out on his crime was off the charts. I started working again, thinking that would be it. But God must have been on my side today because I arrived at the coffee machine next to Mr. Tomato Stealer's desk just in time to hear, "No, listen, it's really simple. Just have it delivered here instead of your home address. They deliver big packages to the door here, so you can have yours sent here as well, instead of having to go to the post office every time. Trust me, I do it all the time." And suddenly I knew how to get my revenge. Release the wrath of the cherry tomatoes. Me, knowing that having personal packages delivered under the office address is against company policy, because I'd been told about it the first day amongst other company policies, innocently asked my supervisor about it, knowing the answer I'd get. I simply put on my best surprise face and said, "That's weird. I just heard Mr. Tomato Stealer talking about having a package delivered here." My supervisor said he'd look it up. Today I walked out of work as a tomatoless woman. I had no tomatoes, but I had pettiness. That and the knowledge that Mr. Tomato Stealer now, instead of having his package comfortably delivered here, would have to detour on his way home to go to the post office to pick up his packages like the rest of us. Depending on cost, you could make a small package addressed to Mr. Tomato Stealer at your work. The only things inside would be a picture of a jar of cherry tomatoes and a piece of paper with the two words, "I know." And our second story. Unexpected employment. This didn't happen to me, but it was relayed to me by the manager. There was a locally owned hardware store close to where I was working. This place had the most amazing selection of fasteners, nuts, bolts, screws, etc., down to M2 Allen screws. The kind of stuff you'd never find at a big box. Everything was always in its place. You'd never see a bag of M3x5 screws in the M3x8 slot. It was heaven for a tinkerer like me. One evening, I complimented the manager on how immaculate the section always was, and she started laughing. She tells me that it used to be a mess, but one day everything was in the right spots, but none of the employees would take credit. They all hated having to organize the section. I can't blame them, and everyone was confused. They started joking about being visited by the bolt fairy. A couple days later, she notices a teen boy intently looking through one of the drawers. Then he moves a few bags around and closes it. She realized she was witnessing the bolt fairy in action. He notices he's being watched. He muttered a timid, "I'm sorry," and turns to leave. The manager stops him and says, "Don't be sorry, but I can't have you working here unless you work here. Can you come back later with your mom or dad?" He mutters a shy, "Okay," and leaves. About an hour later, he comes back with his mom. The mom was looking apprehensive and apologetic. The teen looked like he knew he was about to be in big trouble. The mom explained that her son was autistic and loved organizing things. He wouldn't get stressed about things that were disorganized, but just enjoyed sorting stuff. The manager explained that for insurance, legal, and moral reasons, he couldn't work in the store unless he worked for the store. The mom said that it wouldn't happen again, and the teen's eyes started to water. That's when the manager pulled out an application and a uniform polo and asks what hours he wanted to be scheduled. The mom just started laughing and the boy exploded into tears of joy. I found out later that he worked there for about 2 years until his family had to move across the country. When he put in his notice, the owner found out where they were moving, went online and found another locally owned hardware store with good reviews, contacted them, and gave a glowing recommendation. Okay, I don't usually get emotional about hardware stores, but this story seriously warmed my heart. I absolutely love how instead of scolding him, the manager immediately recognized his passion and offered him a job. Can we just appreciate the wholesome moment when the teen burst into tears of joy after getting hired? And our next story. Lady mistook me for staff, then insulted my husband too. Last year, my husband and I had to take our cat to the vet. She stayed overnight for surgery, and when we went to pick her up the next day, the vet's assistant at the front counter said she was listless, but okay, and wouldn't get into her carrier. So they let me go in the back to try to get her in the carrier while my husband stayed up front and paid. I got her into the carrier, brought her up front, and gave it to my husband, saying, "Here she is, seems to be fine, just tired." So I totally understand the confusion, not just the reaction afterward. As my husband and I were trying to soothe our cat before heading out to the car, the next lady in line snapped her fingers at me and said she was there to pick up her dog, and could I go in the back and get it? I said, "Sorry, I don't work here," and the assistant behind the counter had gone somewhere after finishing the transaction with my husband. The lady said, "I saw you give that man his cat, now get my dog." It's the... don't remember the kind of dog. Again, I said, "Sorry, I'm Canadian, it's bred into me, but not all Canadians apparently. But I don't work here, and that's our cat." She again snapped at me and said, "Get my dog now." My husband turned to her and said, "That's my wife, and we're picking up our cat. I'm sure someone will be up here soon to help you." The lady said, "Don't cover for her. I saw her come from the back with your cat. Are you trying to score with her? It won't work. I don't think a girl like her would go for a guy like you. Now, where's my dog?" I took this chance to give my husband the sloppiest kiss I could, saying, "You're just my type. Want to go home with me?" Just then as well, a worker came from the back and said she could help the lady. The lady scoffed and said, "It's nice that someone here can. Your coworker here's getting all over this person and won't get my dog." The vet assistant simply said, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here. She's just picking up her cat." Then the lady said something that would have set me off if I wasn't so concerned about getting our cat in the car and home. She hates car rides. Well, why didn't she say something then? Had I not been so busy trying to leave and preparing for the car ride ahead, I would have lit into her. The cat's fine, just had a strange growth removed, but learned some colorful words I let out about the lady at the vet's on the ride home. Aside from all the other red flags, people who think it's acceptable to snap their fingers at other people in order to be served makes me see red. And our last story. She thought the driveway was hers until the law set her straight. Before we moved into our home, it belonged to a distant relative, an elderly man who'd been caring for his 100-plus-year-old mother. The two of them had lived quiet, simple lives in the house for decades. After she passed away, the man remained in the home alone, though not exactly in peace. That's when our neighbor, the one who lives in the duplex next door, really started to sink her claws in. She had a reputation around the block, nosy, manipulative, and more than a little entitled. Over the years, she'd taken full advantage of the old man's generous nature. She was a hoarder living in a cramped duplex apartment, so she used his basement like her own personal storage unit. Furniture, boxes, junk, she stashed it all there, and he let her. The day he passed away, he'd spent it doing manual labor, helping someone with something heavy despite his known heart condition. When the estate rep came to sort everything out, it became obvious just how much of her stuff had made its way into the house. The rep had to schedule a specific time for her to come retrieve what was hers, and even then, she left plenty behind. When we bought the house, it was still filled with his things and plenty of hers. Old chairs, bins, a mattress in the basement. It was clear she treated his home like her own overflow unit. We didn't give any of it back. That should have been the end of it, but of course it wasn't. The real conflict began over the driveway. Between our house and her duplex sits a 2-car wide stretch of pavement that spans both properties. Years ago, the man and his mother had owned both our house and the duplex she lives in now, But after selling the duplex off and giving up driving altogether, the driveway essentially became her private parking spot, despite only legally owning half of it. She only has one car. Despite that, she has 3 options for parking. One spot in the shared front driveway, a private covered spot in the back of her building, and a second back space she could easily use. And yet, when we moved in and started using one of the front driveway spots, specifically the one in front of our side of the property, she lost her mind. She came over, puffed up and angry, insisting that the front spots were hers and that we should only park in our single space in the back. We'd already spoken to the city before moving in, had property lines confirmed, and discovered that the portion of the driveway in front of the sidewalk was actually city property, not privately owned at all. That meant legally it was available to anyone. We explained this to her calmly, but she wasn't having it. She began a campaign of petty retaliation. She started parking diagonally across the 2-car-wide driveway to block both spots, even though she only drove one car. But I was unemployed at the time, which meant I had time to play her game. Every time she left, I'd move one of our cars into a spot before she returned, over and over. She couldn't win. Not long after, she got her family involved. Her sister and brother-in-law technically owned her duplex, though it was clear she lived there rent-free, so she could claim to the state that she didn't own anything substantial, just her car. Her brother-in-law showed up, trying to assert authority over the driveway. Again, we held our ground. The city had made it clear the space in front of the sidewalk was public. Their opinions didn't change the law, so they escalated. One day, they brought in a bunch of railroad ties, heavy wooden beams, and lined them along the edge of the driveway to physically block access and force it to function as a single-car space. Real mature. But once again, I had time on my hands. Every time I saw them gone, I'd simply roll the ties out of the way and park. Legally, they had no right to place obstructions on city property, and since the ties were technically just debris on public space, we were well within our rights to move them. It was the equivalent of someone throwing a tire into the street and calling it a fence. Eventually, they called the police on us, claiming we were tampering with their property, the railroad ties. When the officers arrived, we calmly explained the situation, showed them our conversations with the city, and pointed out that the ties were sitting on public property. The cops took one look at the layout, one look at them, and pretty much said, "Yeah, you need to quit this nonsense." That was the turning point. Shortly after, we found out her sister, not the brother-in-law, was actually the legal owner of the duplex, and apparently the sister wasn't thrilled to hear about the drama. She called us directly, apologized for the hassle, and assured us she had no idea any of this was going on. Then she told her sister, and her husband, to cut the crap and learn to share the space like grown adults. Since then, things have been mostly quiet. The railroad ties disappeared. She stopped trying to claim both parking spaces. We still don't wave or talk when we see each other, but at least we're no longer playing passive-aggressive parking chess every other day. It's amazing how entitled people can become over something as simple as a driveway, especially when they've spent years using something unchallenged and suddenly have to deal with, sharing. But in the end, the law was on our side, and after enough pushback and a little help from her own family, we finally reclaimed what was ours. And to this day, if we park in that front spot, we do so with a little extra satisfaction. Storing junk in your basement, trying to claim the driveway like it came with her inheritance, Karen really said, "What's yours is mine, and what's mine is still mine." Glad you stood your ground, played it smart, and watched her own family shut her power trip down. Bonus points for reclaiming the front spot with petty satisfaction. Parking never tasted so sweet. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.